Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am absolutely thrilled that you're here. And I am super delighted to have my friend back on the show, Glenn Gonzales. Now, Glenn has become an incredible friend. He and his wife, Heidi, and he's a member of my Multifamily Boardroom Mastermind. And he was just on stage at the LA event. And Glenn is quite a success story. So we're going to dig into all that. We're going to talk about his new book, and we're going to add a ton of value today. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you very much, Rod. And I have to say, your background, where you're sitting out there in Florida, is absolutely beautiful.
Well, you've been there. You know, you've sat at that table right there and had lunch with us when we had the first version of the Multifamily Boardroom Mastermind here at my house, which was kind of the springboard for what has now become the largest multifamily mastermind, really, I think, on the planet. Yeah, we had the first version here at the house, and Glenn was here. Maureen Miles was here. Glenn's new partner, David Tupin, was here, and that's where they met, I think, for the first time. Is that right? I think you guys met here.
That's exactly right. I mean, right. He and I were sitting in your living room, right there in your boardroom in your house, and we were just chit-chatting. And, I didn't know him from Adam. So actually, Rod, I got to give you a big shout out. I mean, talk about networking and being in the right place at the right time. And had I not been invited to come to your home and join as an original founder of this mastermind, I would have never met my business partner. And we bought deals together and made a lot of money together. So
I know. And he's 24 freaking years old. So, he's the energy component now, right? You and I, we need that energy around us. We feed off of it, and he's total energy. Yeah.
He's the millennial that's getting us out there and doing all this online marketing, and he loves it, and I don't.
So, yeah, and he's good at it. No, I feel you. I Tiff's like, hey, you should be posting every day on Instagram and talking about your freaking vegetable juice. I'm like, sweetheart, no, it's not happening. Yeah. But anyway, let's dig in. But first, before we start, I want to talk about your book, because I was honored to be able to write the foreword for it. So guys, Glenn has wrote a book called From Maintenance Man to Millionaire. It's an awesome book. And like I said, I wrote the foreword, and hold it up so people can see it. Yeah, awesome book. It's on Amazon. Just go get it. He's my friend, and it's absolutely worth reading. So highly recommend that. And some of the things we're going to talk about are in that book, but the thing that I think I'd like to dig right in, if you don't mind. I mean, let's do it.
Let's jump in it.
I mean, the truth of it is, guys, he started as a maintenance man, and now he's had over 4,000 doors. Is that about right?
Yeah, about 45. Yeah. Well, actually, it's pushing 5,000 now.
5,000 doors. So, guys, from maintenance man to 5,000 doors. Read the book to get more detail on that. But I want to dig into adding some value to you guys, because he's got so many nuggets and bombs that he drops when he talks. And so, let's talk firstly. Because everybody's looking to find deals, okay? Right. The building the broker relationships, which I want to talk about in a minute. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about that one guy. Tell the story of Ed, the guy you met, how you met, stayed in touch, and what happened as a result.
Sure. You know what? The way I met Ed, and in a nutshell, Ed sold me 8 apartment complexes and his management company. But in order for me to tell you about Ed, I got to back up a couple of steps, because it's all about networking. So I'm sitting, volunteering my time at an apartment association function, and sitting across from me is a guy named John Gibson. And he's a big-time owner, developer, builder, owns a lot of stuff. And I'm a regional manager. I'm a W-2 guy, right? Just doing my job. And he and I took a liking to each other, and he was impressed because I was young, and he was, old and knowledgeable. I shouldn't say old. He was experienced because he was probably younger than I am now. So I got to do what I say.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah, not going to go there. But I told him I wanted to buy a deal, and I presented him this little one that I had done some numbers on, and he's like, yeah, it's okay, but I have a better deal you might like, and go look at it. It's a deal, and I'll sell it to you. I own it, and I've neglected it. He neglected it. There was lots of upside. John Gibson sold me that deal. And I brought in 2 investors. It was my very first multifamily stuff. I had to come up with $150,000. And Rod, do you think I had $150,000 at the time?
No.
No way. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And he said, you come up with 150 and I'll sell you the deal. So we did. I went to my boss and a vendor, and they each put in 75 and I put in 0. Anyway, we bought the deal, sold it a year and a half later, and then made $1 million, and everybody was happy. We sold it, but we carried a note back, and those buyers that bought it from me, they were getting into default into their loan, and they were also going to default on the first mortgage. And so I started asking around and talking to people, and somebody said, you ought to talk to a guy named Ed Springman. He buys troubled notes and defaults, and he's an investor. And I'm like, okay. So here's a 70-year-old man, and he has been in the business for years. And I went to him and I told him about this, and he's like, yeah, I'll buy that note, for 60 or 70 cents on the dollar. And I said, well, I can't speak for the lender, but, make an offer to them because they're in default. Sure enough, he bought it. And then later, that deal either traded hands or the guy refinanced, I don't know, but he got paid 100% of the face value of that loan. Plus, he got all the default interest that had been accruing under the old loan terms. So he made a ton of money on that, just on the note. He didn't even buy the real estate. He just bought the note. Mm-hmm. Ed and I became fast friends, right? We just, we shook hands. We maintained our relationship. And I told Ed Springman, I said, Ed, if you ever want to sell your management company, give me a call. If you ever want to retire, give me a call. He's like, I'm never going to retire. Well, guess what? He turns 80 years old. Something happened in his life and on the personal side. And he called me. He's like, I think I'm ready to sell. I'm like, really? So he's like, I want to sell you my management company. And at that point, having been in the industry myself for 20, 30 years, I said, Ed, I don't really need to buy a management company. At this point, I'm so seasoned, I can run my own management company. So I said, but really what I want, Ed, is those 8 different apartment complexes that you have up in Dallas, Fort Worth. Because he had about 1,500 units, Rod, and I wanted those. So we came to an agreement on a price, shook hands, and he sold me all 8 of those. And guess how much money I had to raise from investors to close on those? $22 million in equity.
Holy cow.
You think
how'd you do that? I mean, I don't want to derail. I want to talk about how you did that. We can wait on that for a second. But before, sorry to interrupt, but guys, he just gave you an incredible strategy. Okay, whatever submarket you are in, connect with some of the owners there that own the size property that you're interested in. Start relationships, especially if they're long a tooth, 70 years old, 75 years old, and you build those relationships and you add value and you just become friends with these people. Look at, you bought 1,500 doors because of a relationship, because you stayed in touch and
Plus that very first one, that little 44 unit, bought that one too, all over a relationship. Matter of fact, in the book, Rod, chapter 9 is all about, the importance of relationships and how to develop relationships and
love it.
And it's a frame mind because a lot of people ask, how did you do that? Well, you put yourself out there, you network, those boot camps that you have, and all of those masterminds, you have all these people under one roof, and relationships. We mentioned just at the very beginning of this episode, Rod, how I met my current business partner because I was out networking. Right.
Guys, you've all heard me say it ad nauseum. I mean, this is a team sport. This is who you know, not just what you know. It's more who you know than what you know, frankly. And so, and that's why people keep coming back to my boot camps time and time again. They're out in the hallways, they're networking. I had probably close to $3 billion on stage. I had operators that bought general admission tickets that I never even saw in the room. They were out raising equity out in the hallways and a whole bunch of them. There's probably another billion or two out in the hallways networking, raising equity. So it's turned into this giant thing. And I don't even know what to do with it yet, but it's a quality problem. I'm just not quite sure how we, make it larger, facilitate it, add value to it, and just continue to grow it because we're selling out every time. And by the way, guys, Orlando is next. RodInOrlando.com. Just for come. I promise you'll be glad you did. But let's talk about now.
Let me pause for right there for a moment. People ask me because I owned my own property management company and I bought all these units and I'm in it. And I went through all of your material, the binder that you give to your students, and everything you need to buy an apartment complex and to be successful is in that manual that you give to your students. I mean, people call me all the time and I'm like, look, if you really want to know, I can't teach it to you in 10 minutes but
right.
I've read the material and it's dead on. So anyway,
thank you. Yeah. A lot of my competitors, they'll give people a taste and then, try to upsell them, or they'll bring in a lot of speakers to sell stuff. I don't do any of that. It's just me for 3 days. I bring in, an SEC attorney to teach SEC. I bring in a lender to teach Fannie Mae debt, but those are the only, other than the panelists I have on stage on Saturday nights, it's me. And it's a little bit brutal. It took me about a week to recover from this last one, but we add as much value as we possibly can. We even sent emails with additional content. We have this new book we just created about how to hire a third-party property manager, and it's really a quality piece. And we got links to examples of the property management agreement and the reports you can expect and every question you can possibly ask a third-party property manager before you consider them. And guys, if you want that, you can text the word partnership to 41411 and then you get a free copy of it. But cool. Thank you, brother. So let's talk about for a minute some of the strategies that you learned as a manager. Maybe talk a little bit about, your start in the property management business, because you did it for quite a while before you actually started buying, right?
That's correct.
And then I know you've got an incredible culture. What's that? I'm sorry.
I said I was in property management for 25 years before I started.
Holy cow.
So. Holy
cow. Wow. Tell the story. I just want you to tell the story about when you were a maintenance man and then you also ended up in a unit and you were the one leasing it. Well, tell that. That's funny as hell.
Yeah, that is a great story. It's also in the book, but it's like, I was a maintenance man and I was doing make-readies, right? Because that's what maintenance guys do. They get the units ready. Well, I was on a small 60-unit apartment complex, so I was kind of a part-time maintenance guy and the part-time manager, right? So I had leased the apartments. Well, somebody came into the office and they moved into one of these units that I'd gotten ready, and they handed me the checklist, and sure enough, one of the burners on the stove wasn't working, and the dishwasher wouldn't start, and the toilet was running water after you flush it. And the guy's like, I don't know, man, can you just send somebody over to fix it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I'll send somebody over. I didn't tell him it was me. I was hoping he would be at work or something. So I went over to the house. I changed my clothes, first of all, put on my maintenance clothes, and went over there with the checklist and a bunch of tools. And the guy answers the door, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I'm also the maintenance man. And we had this awkward moment of silence, like, so you're the one that fixed that? I'm like, yeah. And then he realized.
So you're the one that screwed up to begin with, and here you are again.
I got to go back and fix my own mistakes with egg on my face.
Well, listen, it's a good thing you quit that day job to do what you're doing now. But so you self-manage still, correct? You're not, or do you use third party? I can't remember.
I'm currently doing third party. So, and here's why.
Okay.
I get that question all the time, right? And it's not always about unit count, and it's always not, and it's not always about whether or not your property management company is going to make you money or should you farm it out. It comes down to an individual choice, and I'm sure you've covered all this in your material that you have. But in the last 18 months, Rod, I've sold about 3,000 apartments. Right. So my unit count is going lower and lower and lower. Well, I had my own management company. At the time I owned it, I owned 4,500 units, but I managed another 2,000 for somebody else. So I had 6,500 units under property management. Well, that was very distracting running a management company, and I couldn't spend the time I wanted to spend underwriting and putting deals together, right? Or going on tours and putting deals together. So I had to pick my battles. Sold that management company, also to get away from a business partner, and then sold the assets. But now I use third party. But I will tell you, having been an operator myself and providing fee management, I know exactly what questions to ask. I can tell you if the regional and the on-site is going to be.
Let's go through some. Yeah, let's go through some. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Probably the most important person you need to see, meet, understand, know is the regional. Yes?
Yeah. And I think it's important as an owner to really understand their roles, because, we see the regional manager as the catch-all, right? But I will be honest with you, if you put money in a deal and the property management sets up the balance sheet, the regional manager doesn't know the difference between, how much equity has come in the form of what members on the equity on the balance sheet as an asset versus, some other. That's not his role. He's not the CFO. He's not a bookkeeper. But yet we ask the regional manager certain questions that are all surrounding, the financials. Well, do you want them to be a financial expert, or do you want them to be a property manager expert? I find I would prefer if my regional manager had come up through the ranks, whether that person was a leasing agent and then a manager and now they're a regional manager, because they get the business. And you want them to be good at that business, but yet we tend to ask questions to the regional about other portions. So I think it's important as an owner, know what their roles are and what you expect out of them. Do you expect a regional to do a market survey, or do you expect the property manager to do a market survey to understand where the rents ought to be? Well, that's a great question, because you know what I found? Even though they're third-party management companies, nobody likes to do them. And therefore they don't get done very often. And, and who should do them and who should review them? Well, as an owner, you better make sure your rents are right, because the property management company, they're going to take the shortcut and they're like, what do you want me to charge for the 2 bedrooms? And they're going to seek, your advice. You may turn to the regionals like, what do you recommend? But I guarantee you, here's a little nugget. You should also understand how many properties are in that regional manager's portfolio.
Right. How many they're managing or covering. Yeah, for sure.
If that guy or girl has 10 properties, that are spread out all over a city in their portfolio, how often are they going to be at your property? They can't be there once a week. If they have
10% of the time max.
Yeah. Right. And all the things that they have going on relative to employee turnover and all the things the regional has to do. But if they have 10 in their portfolio, it's going to be a stretch whether or not you're going to get their undivided attention. If they have 5 properties in their portfolio or 6, they can almost get there once a week, and they'll be very hands-on.
Right.
That's a great question to ask. How many in your portfolio?
Yeah.
The management company wants to load up the regional as many as they can, because they charge a management fee, and that's a fixed expense, right? So they want 15.
Right. Sure. The more people that, the more assets that they can give that regional, the more profit they get. And that's absolutely one of the questions in the book, guys. So, but it was very interesting. We did a tour a few weeks back, and we did our Dallas asset, and we did a Louisiana asset. And the Dallas asset, 100% occupied. In fact, the manager was at the LA Bootcamp, so sweetheart. And we get there, and I look around, and I have an attention to detail. And the only thing I saw that needed attention was there was a tree branch that had broken. It was still stuck up in the tree, but it was above cars. And I was like, you know what? They better fix that before it drops. That's right. I mentioned it, and they say, and to the regional, he said, it's already in the report for them to deal with that today. I'm like, boom. Then we go to Louisiana asset, and it was one thing after another stupid stuff that should have been handled, from anybody with attention to detail, and the regional didn't even point these things out. And we're making changes, obviously, but the regional is so freaking important. So let me ask you this. Let's shift gears for a second. And so guys, get the book that I did, because you're really going to love it on interviewing third-party property managers. So just text partnership to 41411. But I want to shift gears for a minute, because everybody's trying to find deals right now. And let's talk about one aspect of that. We're not going to talk about direct-to-seller marketing or any of that stuff. I want to talk about brokers for a minute and broker relationships. So can you speak to that a little bit, Glenn?
Yeah. You either love them or hate them, right? It goes both ways.
There's that.
I love dealing with brokers, but I also would prefer to buy deals principal to principal if I can. I've done both ways. Right. But let me tell you, let me share with you one experience. And it actually happened at one of your boot camps. No, your mastermind. I'm selling a deal to a gentleman named Mr. Black, the Westwood Apartments. And right before closing, the chiller breaks. The chiller, provides, HVAC system for the whole property. They're very big machinery and they're very expensive. Well, it breaks. I had two choices. I could put a Band-Aid on it and just sell it, or I can replace that whole chiller, right? So my business partner said, I don't think that's a good idea. These guys are going to close anyways. They've got non-refundable earnest money. Let's just put a repair. And I'm like, dude, that just doesn't set right with me, my personality. I'm like, that's right. I would hate if somebody did that to me, right? So I made the business decision to buy this gentleman a new chiller for the whole property. And the broker called me. He's like, did I hear that right? You're going to buy a new one, not pay half, not negotiate? I mean, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, because when he found out that it broke, the broker was panicking that the whole deal was going to blow up, right? I mean, right before closing. So I said, no, I feel like it's the right thing to do. I would hate for somebody to do that to me. So we did, right? It actually couldn't even show up in time for closing. So we put 50% down and paid for it and then gave the buyer the other 50% in an escrow account on the settlement statement. So it's all paid for up front. And it got installed. Wow. The buyer I had never met in person.
Yeah, you met him at my mastermind. I remember the Black brothers. Yeah.
Yes, I met him at your mastermind, Ed. And we're going around the circle and we're introducing ourselves. And they hadn't yet got to me. But Mr. Black stands up from across. He goes, I don't really want to introduce me. I want to introduce Glenn Gonzales. And I looked up and I'm like,
I remember.
What did I do? Who are you? And what are you going to say? He's like, I don't know him and he doesn't know me, but he shared this story because he was the guy that I bought the chiller for. And now I'm sitting in the same room with him. So talk about relationships.
It's a small world, man. This multifamily space is a small world.
Yeah. In my book, Rod, you wrote the foreword, but guess what? The afterword, where the broker wrote it, Al, the broker had this experience, wrote that for me. And he's like, Glenn, I will always do business with you because I know you're a stand-up guy. So guess what? Fast forward, I've met a business partner with you at your thing, Dave Tupin and I bought a deal. And that same broker called me. He's like, Glenn, I got a portfolio deal for you, and I think I can get you in on this deal. And it was a great deal. He's like, Glenn, it's a great deal. He goes, the owner does not want to do tours, but he's allowed me to show it to just 5 people. He's like, Al, pick the 5, and whoever you show it to, I'll entertain an offer from them. I was one of the 5 because of that relationship from that broker got me in. And guess what? We bought that deal. It's up in Fort Worth, and we closed on it and got a Fannie Mae loan. So, thank goodness that broker and I had a good working relationship. So when we're in this business, it's a long-term relationship thing. Everybody wants to do deals today. It just takes being in the right place, networking, developing the friendship, developing the relationship. And I put this in my book also. People will do business with the people they like to do business with, not who they have to do business with. So if you're a likable guy or a gal and you develop relationships, chances are at some point you're going to get a deal from a broker.
Yeah, no question. And of course, you showed your integrity. And this really is a small world, guys. This commercial multifamily space, you get into it and you realize everybody pretty much knows everybody. And I can promise you that broker is, besides the fact you got another portfolio from him, so no telling the return on that $100,000 gesture. It's crazy, but he's telling everybody he knows what a stand-up guy Glenn Gonzales is. And that's just the way this world works. It truly is all about relationships. It's about likability. It's about people knowing that when you say you do something, you're going to do it. And a lot of this stuff happens on a handshake. These relationships begin that way. And there's a lot of old school. Certainly things get reduced to writing, but the point is, you screw people around and it gets out there pretty fast. And this is the antithesis of that. So, well, listen, let me ask you this, brother. Let's talk for a minute. I love to ask this question, and I'd love to ask it of you specifically. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, after 25 years in property management, 5,000 doors now in ownership, what might you tell your 20-year-old self, and what might you do differently, if anything?
My biggest heartaches in that whole process, Rod, over time, has been my business partners that I went in business with. I didn't spend enough due diligence figuring out the partner that I'm about to be married to for years and years and years. I went into it, with all rosy eyes and everything's going to be wonderful, only to be disappointed 2 times that I've had to separate from business partners because of ethics or personality or greed or whatever.
Work ethic.
Yeah, work ethic, all of the above. So I actually took all those sad stories and those heartaches, and I actually put them in my book. I've got a whole section on good partners versus bad partners.
Fantastic.
You know how they had that on the one book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they compared the 2 mindsets. I've done the same thing. I've shared my heartaches that I had with business partners, and then what I really look for and need in a business partner. So anyway, that's been one of the things. If I can go back in time, I would tell my younger self, dude, you need to pay closer attention and ask all the right questions when you're getting in bed with somebody, to do all these
awesome
deals with. And
yeah, awesome. Hey, guys, get his book for sure. I've also got a free resource to supplement that. I've got a list of partnership questions, the hard questions you should ask up front. You can get it for free if you text partnership to 41411. I've thrown out as much content like you to add value as I can. And those hard questions, you got to ask them. The other thing, tell me if you agree with this, Glenn. I mean, certainly you have to ask all the questions. What happens if somebody dies? You disagree. You need to do your due diligence. See what they've done in the past, what their work ethic is. See if your core values are aligned. But what do you think about just the simple trusting your gut, just your intuition? If it doesn't feel right, do you believe in that at all?
Very much so. I'll be honest with you. I'm a religious man. So when I get to the toughest questions that I can't find solutions to, I will close the door to my office and I'll kneel down right here next to my desk and I'll pray about things. And honestly, what's the difference between that and your gut? You're looking for influence, you're looking for intuition, and you're looking for, inspiration. They're all, you're entitled to all of that stuff. So I turn to my Father in heaven, actually, for advice.
Right. No, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I love it. I absolutely love it. And prayer and just reflection. Whatever you however you do it, you want to trust it because
religion. Right? They don't believe in God, but I would encourage them, go meditate then, or find a way to get that intuition that your gut tells you that I can work well with this person or I can't. Along those same lines, Rod, we talk about how I met Dave Tupin and it was sitting in your boardroom, and then we didn't become partners. I actually spent more time talking to Maureen about business separating from a partner than I did finding.
Right. She went through a partner problem as well, right? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then I listened to Dave Tupin present some of his underwriting skills and stuff at one of your masterminds. And I thought, that's an impressive kid, but I didn't think much about it. It was actually my wife. We were, I think, at a Las Vegas conference. Right. And,
we had one of the masterminds in Vegas. Yeah. Right.
I bumped into you and Tiffany at the airport, and you're like, "Hey, want to jump in the limo with us?" Like a limo ride.
Right. You threw in the back of the limo with us, and we went to the hotel. Right. And we got to get to know your wife a little better, and it was beautiful. So back to Tupin. So you got to see him speak, and yeah.
And my wife actually heard him speak and learned a little bit about David Tupin. My wife tapped me on the shoulder. She's like, "Glenn, that's the kind of partner that you need, somebody like that." So
nice.
I thought about that for a moment, and we're looking for inspiration. My wife's an inspiration to me. Sometimes she just calls it the obvious. So anyway, We ended up doing one deal together, not under one company. I mean, he was a partner and I was a partner, and we did one deal together. And we kind of tested the water with each other. And sure enough, he was all that he said he was. I mean, it wasn't make-believe. He put his money where his mouth was. And for me, that's credible. So it was then that we decided, do you guys want to do this, partner and be partners going forward? And yes, and actually we're building a partnership and a team around, multiple individuals. We're going to bring in another partner that's going to be, at asset management.
I'm so glad you said that. Because that leads me up to my next question. But guys, there was a big nugget he just gave you. When you get into a partnership, definitely get my list of questions, read Glenn's book. And when you get into a partnership, you do not have to do a global thing that you're going to do everything together. Do one deal. Get to know each other, understand each other, look at each other's work ethic, see if the person you're aligning with does what they say they're going to do, and really pay attention with micro detail to how they do and how you do and how well you work together. Are your values aligned? Are you aligned in general before you get married? You're basically dating before you get married, and it's so critical. But what you just said, that you're building your team, leads me to my next question, because you're an incredible leader. You've had lots of people working under you. What do you think is a characteristic that every leader should possess? What or more than one, if you like. But
a leader?
What should a leadership embody?
Or,
leader.
Or other employees. You want what should a leader?
No, I want to know what a leader should, because we're all leaders, okay? We all want to build teams. We want to work together. We want to motivate people. What do you think is a characteristic that every leader should possess?
That's a great question. And I feel passionate about this. So I'm going to try and find the words that will convey exactly what I'm trying to say. But I think that if you're going to be a good, effective leader, you better be a master at your craft. If you're going to oversee the underwriter, you should understand underwriting. You don't have to be perfect at it. You don't have to be better than them, but you got to understand it. If you want to oversee, asset management, you better be dang pretty good at asset management. Yes, go hire somebody better. But what I get frustrated with is when these leaders step in and they treat people like they're just, I don't know, throwaway pieces of trash, right? It's like, just do what I tell you to do. That's not leadership. Hiring somebody and saying, go do this and go do that. That's not leadership. Leadership, everybody wants to do a great job, but they're going to look to you to lead and guide them, right? I mean, and the other thing is, don't be afraid to be a leader. You can't always be their friend in everything.
Right.
I think people will respect you more as a leader if you lead them to success. I mean, if you and your team are having success, everybody around you is going to put more value on that, whether or not they were able to cry on your shoulder and all that. Now, you could still be friends, but that shouldn't be your first priority. You should be your priority is going to lead you and the team to success. So one of the traits I guess I'm trying to get out is be really good at what you do and lead the people around you by example. Lead by example. Maybe that's the term.
Absolutely.
You can't really tell somebody, I want you to be here 40 hours a week if you're only working 20 hours a week. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
That's not a good leader. If you want somebody to work 40 hours a week, you better be there for 41 or 45 or 50 or 60, or whatever it takes, because people will watch you. They watch you more than they listen to you. So anyway, I get all worked up on that.
No, that's great. Great advice, man. Great advice. So tell me, people think that this road to success is just a straight line, and there's no bumps and there's no hurdles and there's no sacrifices. What did you have to sacrifice to get your success, if anything?
I have a whole section in my book about overcoming challenges. I, like you, Rod, I've filed, I don't know if you have or haven't, but I had success. I lost it. I had to file bankruptcy. I had properties get foreclosed on. I had stuff get short sold. I went through a tremendous downturn. I think my success came at having to give up on pride and give up on materialism and give up on the difference between, or knowing the difference. I had to sacrifice whether it was a want or a need. And when I arrived at that place and I had values placed on correct principles instead of, incorrect principles, I was able to have a little more success. I don't think I sacrificed my marriage. I don't think I sacrificed my kids. I think I've always tried to maintain that balance in relationship. I think that's the one thing I had going for me is I do things for them, not for myself.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this. If you had another thought, please add. I'm sorry.
No,
go
ahead.
Question I'm dying to ask you. What's the most courageous thing you think you've ever done?
Oh, courageous.
Or biggest risk you've ever taken. I want you to inspire people that maybe haven't taken action yet, that know they deserve this, they want this.
Well, you have a lot of listeners that are getting into the business, and you remember that first deal, that 44 unit deal, where the guy said, "I'll carry it, but you got to come up with $150,000." That obstacle was right there. I did not have $150,000 at all. And I went to my boss and a vendor and asked them each to put up $75,000. I was going to put up zero. That sounds ludicrous, right? That crazy, but the numbers didn't lie and they did it. Well, that was pretty bold. Fast forward a few years, I came across a deal that was 200 units in San Antonio, and my old business partner didn't want to buy it because it was too complicated or hairy. The bank asked me to do a analysis on it, and my analysis on the management side was they need to put $1 million into that deal. And the bank said, well, we're going to foreclose anyways. We're not investors. We're not going to dump any more money in this. We're going to cut our losses. I said to them, hey, if you carry a note back, I'll put up $1 million and I'll fix the asset. You know what they said to me? Do you have $1 million? It was no different than it was the time before. Right. Dollars. So it took almost a leap of faith to say I can go get $1 million. But Rod, here's what happened when I went and started raising $1 million. People asked me, have you ever done this before? Have you ever syndicated a 200 unit deal before? I'm like, no, this is my first. And right after that, they're like, I'm out. So 9 out of 10 people told me they're out, right? And I thought, I'm never going to raise $1 million. But here's the courageous part. The person that says, no, I'm out, you ask them, do you know somebody else that might? And they're like, yeah, you might call so-and-so or so-and-so, and they'd give me 2 numbers. I'd call both of them. And you just work the phones. You know what, Rod, when we closed that deal, I raised $1 million, we managed it, we fixed it up, we brought it back online. Our investors got a 48 IRR on that deal. Now, all those 9 that passed out of 10, and it was a lot more than 9. I mean, a lot of them passed. I called every one of them back and actually showed them the results. And guess who called me after that on my second deal? Right? It snowballed. I love it. And I think being courageous there, you just have to keep going. I have a whole section of my book about overcoming obstacles. As you know, Rod, there was a time when I was building the business and my wife was dying. Her lungs were failing and she was in a wheelchair and she was on an oxygen and she had this little tank that she had to, tote around just to live. And she got on a transplant list. There was a moment in time where I decided, is this all worth it? Is trying to build a company all worth it? And I honestly, I thought about maybe I should just take time to spend with my wife instead of building a company and again, took it to the Lord and it's like, he helped me get through both of those. Right. So when my wife was struggling, I was holding her hand and I was by her bed. And when she went through surgery, I was there when she went under. I was there when she woke up. But you know what I was doing the rest of the time? I had my laptop open. I was putting deals together just as best as I possibly could. And when she woke up from, recovery, I closed the laptop and I was all in there. I was all in at both at the same time. And a lot of people might find obstacles in their way to stop them from moving forward. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use one analogy that's also in the book, but we were on a fishing trip with all my employees, my team, and we were up in, I think we were in Oregon, and we came across this railroad crossing that was down, and it's just ding, 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 and there were 2 cars in front of us and a whole bunch of cars behind us. And I look around, and that still thing, ding, 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 ding. There's no trains coming, right? Ding, 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 ding. And it's like, what are we doing here? We could be here half the day. So I told Mark, I'm like, hey, Mark, jump out, see if there's a place that we can go over the curb and jump the railroad tracks and see if it's safe. And so he did. He got out of the car, and everybody's watching us. And he looked both ways, and no train coming, and he found an area that we could drive over the railroad tracks. So we did. We jumped the curb and went over the sidewalk and into the dirt and over the railroad tracks, got back on the road and on our merry way. And I look in my rear view mirror, and there's all these cars still stopped at the ding, 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 ding. And I think a lot of people get in that mode, right? When the railroad, when the obstacles are in front of us, they're just going to sit there and stop moving forward. And I guess the analogy is this, is if you can find a way around the obstacles safely, because we did it safely, you can still move forward. And there will always be obstacles in everybody's life. In every chapter of your life, there's going to be obstacles. So unless you could find the courage to move forward, go over them, go around them, a lot of times I found you can't eliminate the obstacles. They're always going to be there in some way or another.
Right.
So anyway, there you have it. That's in the book.
Beautiful example, my friend. Well, listen, brother, it's so great to see you. Give your bride a hug for me, and thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, get his book and
Maintenance Man and Millionaire. It's on Amazon.
Maintenance Man and Millionaire, brother. I'll see you soon, my friend. It's great to see you, brother.
Thanks for having me, Rod. It's always a pleasure.
Of course.
All right.
Always. Take care, man. See you.